Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about the Splatoon 4 Ultimate Bingo, a video I made pretty much because I saw a Peach Smash video and I was like, yeah, I gotta do my own version of this. And Blitz edited this one. It's really cool right off the bat. This is one of my favorite intros that we've done this year. It looks really cool. I did like this idea of making the sections a little more distinct. Obviously, the card I'll be using around when this eventually happens will have them jumbled up to be more random. But I felt this was a cool way to make sure the predictions were spread out across multiple of the things in the game. Obviously, multiplayer still gets the extra segment, but I do really like this kind of approach to it. I think it's a cool way to add to it. So I've done a lot of ads on the channel. This is the first one that I've really proposed, at least as far as I remember. This isn't like something IPL asked me to do or anything. I just felt that this was an event worth hyping up, and I'm glad I did. I still feel that was very worth it. Anyway, actual video time. This was one of the ones I had on from the very beginning. There were a few predictions that I had like kind of solidified, and I definitely had a lot of time going through and exchanging ideas until I had a list I liked. But this was a pretty obvious one, and one that I obviously, I think it makes sense. It's very simple. It's just very safe prediction to kind of open things out. Honestly, this is a prediction I feel less safe about because the Lil Judd storyline is probably, they kind of have been hinting at that since Splatoon 2. So it makes sense, but I kind of hope it's still in the background. To me, it kind of actually makes it more interesting because originally when the Splatoon 2, like, Little Judd being jealous of Judd hints were dropped, I was like, I don't care. I don't care. Why should I care about this little cat? And now in this game, they've, like, done it a lot more where he's, like, actually secretly taking over Grisco, and there's, like, more hints in it. And, like, I really like this slow burn of information in the background. It feels like, something that, like, it's like something that you would feel with, like, Deltarune, like, getting small info on a background character, someone small like that. But it's, like, it's kind of like that, but for Splatoon in this case, where there's so many little background elements that are kind of coming together and creating a more interesting story. And I feel that burn needs just a little bit more time. Like, I think Splatoon 4, you could really start to make it a little more obvious, and then people can be clued in, and that could be a really interesting way to pull it off. This was another one that I had from the very beginning, challenges being a staple feature on launch, and day one really is the prediction here. Like, I really do believe that this feature is one of the most important things they put in the game, and I really wanted to see it. So, something you might be noticing with the style of this video is we're basically jumping between the categories a bit. This wasn't, like, set on a specific order, but I did want to kind of jump back and forth so that people who were interested in each segment would watch the whole thing, rather than, like, skip, oh, I only want to hear the Salmon Run predictions, and just only watch the Salmon Run stuff. Maybe that's a little bit better for people's time in some cases, but this video had so much effort put towards it, I didn't want people jumping around. This was one where I really did want it to perform well. And this was an opinion I had going into Splatoon 3. I didn't want too many new characters in Splatoon 3, because I felt like Splatoon 1 and 2 had, like, a lot of characters with lacking development, and that has, like, skyrocketed with Splatoon 3. There are too many people around, and I'm fine with how this game handled it, to be honest. I think they did pretty well, given just how many characters they wanted to give spotlight. Like, a lot of the extra idle interactions and stuff was cool. I think Deep Cut was the main group to suffer because of that, and then, they're getting Splatoon Raiders, which will hopefully be a good way of amending that. And this is honestly something I look at of, like, I think Splatoon's character work has a lot going for them, but I really want to see, like, more overall arcs and focus on smaller bits. I still think the storytelling done in Octo Expansion is by far unrivaled. I don't think there's a single other story mode in this game that has ever gotten me as invested as Octo Expansion. I don't even think it's remotely close. And I haven't done, like, a full deep dive analyzing that. It's not really my field. So I'm sure there's people who would know better, but I know there's probably a good reason for that. It's one of those things where I know there's something up, even if I don't fully understand why. But, I hold that opinion a lot. And then, yeah, I was talking about this because I mean, I say it here, but this prediction was literally just, like, Deep Cut will be the only returning group that gets focused compared to the other idols. I'm still having it being open when it comes to the agents, because there's a whole host they could do for that. But, like, I was like, yeah, it'll just be Deep Cut focused for us 4. And then This is where the prediction for Deep Cut being more important to the story happened, because they didn't get much development in Splatoon 3, and then Raiders got announced. So scratch that prediction. Instead, I'm gonna say that I'd like the single player to have a co-op option. Think similar to Mario. So yeah, I totally scrapped this. I thought about this I thought about making this another character-focused one, but I already had another character-focused one. It's the stuff about Agent 4 when we get to it. So I had nothing to put for this. So yeah, we get the co-op mode instead, which is a very small prediction, but like, hey, what are you gonna do? Video's almost ready to go out, and then boom, they just drop a spin-off game out of nowhere. So like, you know, working with it the best I could. And then this is like obviously wishful thinking, but I really do believe the devs are probably aware of the map problem. I do think the discourse around it has gotten large enough to where they're probably aware of it. So safe. You know, is it a safe prediction or not? I don't know, but yeah. This is another one I wasn't sure about, but I felt safer making this prediction. Like, originally this prediction was something where I was thinking of predicting some kind of roster cut, but the more I thought about it, I just don't know, really. This isn't like weapons in this game are as complex as things like Smash characters. I think you can have a lot more of them and have it still work. That said, and it's something I didn't really mention for the sake of time, I do think after Splatoon 4, if Splatoon 4 doesn't cut weapons, you know, because it might, I do think Splatoon 4 is going to be, like, the last game before weapon cuts happen. Again, if it doesn't happen in the first place. Because I do think we're gonna start hitting a limit. Like, if we get 2 new classes, we're gonna have, like, 13 classes and, like, probably 7 weapons in each one. By the end of that game, you know, if we have a similar content output, so, like, yeah, I'm seeing the point where eventually we're going to have to start picking quality here, and that's always going to be a tough decision. And then, yeah, this is, like, I think we're going to get something. I don't think we'll get exactly, you know, the underground or other leaked modes for those who know more information about them. I think it'll be like Splatoon 2, where we had, like, 8 Ball and Rocket, and eventually Clam Blitz was added, and Clam Blitz was very different, right? I think this is a similar case. I think these are tests, and the new mode might have some similarities, but it'll probably be very different. I don't know why we don't have an endless mode, and I've seen people argue against it. By the way, I like the color green for this for some reason. I can't really explain why, but yeah, I'd really like to see some kind of endless mode, because I feel that's just a very natural thing. Like, I felt that all the way back in Splatoon 2, and I think it would be a really good way to shape up the game. So I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened yet. Now, this was one of the aspects that I had as well when doing predictions. I obviously wanted to make sure predictions and hopes didn't get too mixed up. Obviously, some predictions are going to be, I really want this thing to happen, but some of my predictions have to be, I don't think they're going to do the thing I want, and rotations are one of them. I think Nintendo very famously doesn't change the way they pick, like, maps or, like, general matchmaking online type stuff very much. And while I'd love the rotation system to change, I don't think it's requested anywhere near enough to actually be something that gets adjusted right now. So this was one of the parts where I knew I was going to say, yeah, it's probably going to be the same thing. I do want to kind of take a brief pause here and talk about pacing as a whole for this video. If you've seen the Smash Brothers bingo video, it's a lot longer. This one is definitely more rapid fire, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, but the only way to have it be longer would be to split it into multiple parts with how I do videos on this channel. So this was kind of one of those factors where I just kind of embraced the pacing. I realized this is what it was going to have to be, and I tried to, you know, make it fast-paced and snappy. To be fair, I think a lot of my predictions are like smaller points where there aren't as much to say about it, which means that the style of the video is also very simple throughout, but I do like the presentation in terms of speed being prioritized. Like, I think that this is still a good focus for how the video is laid out. I think this kind of pacing does end up working presentation-wise, but I'm curious what you guys think. I did not think there would be pushback to this, but I actually got a good bit of pushback on both of these things because they didn't happen in Splatoon 3, which kind of confuses me because, you know, I figure it's for a competitive advantage is the reason they didn't do it. Maybe mouse mode would have been hard to make compatible, I have no idea. But, like, if Splatoon 3 can run at 4K, I think it could probably do 120 FPS as well. This is something I wanted to talk about for a bit, right? I really, like, I don't really get invested in Splatfest usually, right, in the themes of them. I think Team Pass is an incredibly important one because Splatoon's whole thing with the game is that it's in the present, right? Or it's moving forward with time, like 5 years passed since Splatoon 2 to 3, and it was the same thing in game, right? The characters, aged the same way, the world aged the same way, that's how it went. And then the other thing is what I kind of tried to showcase with this point here, which was good editing from Blitz, of showcasing that a lot of the Splatoon games are focused on villains clinging to the past. So even if we were going to go story mode with the past, how do you do it in a way where it's not just the same thing all over again? Like, I think this has to take the element of things being in the past and it has to, change up the overall lesson a bit or add a little bit more nuance, which is something Splatoon story modes kind of desperately need, to be honest. I feel like the moral gray area is not as good as it could be. Like, if you really know about the game's lore, then, like, DJ Octavio is not a full-on villain. Like, there are a lot of interesting dynamics between the two different groups at play, but, like, for people playing the game, they're just never going to notice that kind of thing. Like, it's one of those deep dive only things, and I'd like the story itself to present things that actually challenge the player on, like, how they see this world, rather than, oh, but if you look at this secret hidden article in Japanese, you'll actually find out this cool detail about the game you played. And this is my favorite prediction. So I have been, and I'll be a little honest here, this isn't an insult to people who like the agent or anything. I don't mind people who like draw a fan art of him or a character fan of that. When it comes to purely the stuff they get to do in the game, I cannot care about Agent 4. They got so little and they got thrown into a campaign that was the most copycat one out of all of them. And they do have unique things about them. There are interesting things there, but it's still like in that really hidden hard to nose territory. And I need them to do something with it. And I also think when we're looking at, Team Past, how interesting is it to look at a past protagonist who effectively has been abandoned by, the overall game, with very little mentions and very little work and stuff like that, very little notice from the game. I think that would be really interesting, as long as they're not a villain, because having, previous characters be a villain was something they did with, like, Callie being brainwashed, and then they had, like, Agent 3 gets hypnotized and stuff like that. I want them to be, like, a full-on antagonist, not brainwashed or something like that, but I don't want them to be like the overall villain of the story. I don't want them to be, or I guess like I don't want them to be a stereotypical bad guy. I want some kind of gray area there. I want them to be the main device that they use to push some of the story's themes. This is also one of the cases where I'm really happy with my wording of that specific segment. Like, I think that was explained very well, because I thought a lot about how I wanted to word this to make sure this wasn't Chara wants Agent 4 to be an evil bad guy. So I'm glad I, as far as I can tell, did good with that. This one I'm a lot less certain about compared to the map design changes. I do still think it got more of a spotlight in this game, but it's definitely harder. This is one of those points, though, where, like, this just plugs a video I did and even a video someone else did, because it's very simple. Personally, I just don't see them doing that 2 times in a row. Maybe this is another very safe prediction that I don't have a whole lot to say about. Obviously, the background footage had to include the old scrapped ranked modes. Again, just a pretty obvious one all around. This one was a bit of a larger prediction, but I do kind of believe in this a bit. I think the special lineup has gotten very large, and I do feel it's reasonable for the focus to shift to quality here. Like, are we really going to see Splatoon 4 launch with, like, 25 specials? I just don't see that happening, right? I think specials are starting to hit the limit here, at least with, like, the current system of how the game works. And maybe it's possible they just scrap a whole bunch of specials. That could be the case. But I feel like Salmon specials, like, starting to have their own lineup would make a bit more sense. And again, Kraken was just a very obvious pick for this. So here's another one where I ended up changing it partway through. Originally, my prediction was going to be a 4-team mode, basically, because it's Splatoon 4. But the more I thought about it, the more I think, like, I'm unsure they're going to do that because I feel it'd be too similar to what they did with the 3 teams thing, right? I feel like it'd be kind of repetitive of that. And I also think that this really didn't work out great. I don't think the reception for it has been good, and it's been really hard to get people to, like, you know, shoot against the right teams. Maybe it would be different with 4 teams since it's not an odd number, but I still feel it's safer to cut it out. And then Fizzbang's similar deal. I could see these coming back more because they're kind of just an option there that's pretty easy to use. But again, I feel like it's not like the craziest thing to see it reworked with something else. And Splatfest is again one of those things that hasn't changed in a while, so I feel like there's a higher possibility of something shifting here. This is one case where I wish the background footage would have been a little different. This is kind of just normal salmon run, or normal Splatfest footage. I wish I used some of the Shifty Station footage in the background there just to kind of change it up a little bit, because I feel it makes these sections blend together a little too much, and they are kind of correlated, but I still want to have, like, again, that little bit of extra visual distinction. It's something I talked about last time with the different ink colors. We have an A button that isn't used for much besides clam blitz throws. I don't know how I feel about this prediction anymore, to be honest. I feel like it might just be a movement option for a new weapon class instead. I'm kind of now, like, shifting my opinion to, I'm unsure if, at least when it comes to grounded movement options, if you can really add too much without overcomplicating it. So my opinion on that one's actually kind of changed, but the prediction stays. Can't change any of the predictions. They're locked in. The player prediction I have is all new special weapons. Specifically, I don't think they're gonna do that. Well, they did. This is absolutely a case of I do not want this, and I tried to explain it, but, like, overhauling specials made the design overall worse. And obviously we have the benefit of more time and hindsight and all of that, so maybe it could be done better. But I hate the idea of a special overhaul. I genuinely really dislike it, because my take on, like, specials coming back is that you should be able to use returning specials as a way to filter out the specials that work, that do something the devs want to do, that have a general good quality on the game, and keep them in and leave behind the stuff that doesn't work. Right? Obviously, they still have to fit the vision of what specials are in that game, so maybe they have to be tweaked or changed a little bit. That's totally fine. We saw that with, like, how Kraken was reworked in this game. But I think that getting a special design and nailing it, like Caster's pretty unanimously agreed fun special, right? And just, okay, well, we already did that, so now we're going to go redo everything because we don't want to bring it back. I hate that so much. Like, if you have something that works and people like it, then bring it back. And then I had to mention Big Bubbler. Series, I'm going to predict, and then I had to mention Bubble Blower, of course. Zipcaster. In fact, and then, of course, I predicted Zipcaster because in this case, it's not just a good, you know, single-player special, but it could probably work in Salmon Run, and it could definitely work in single-player, because it already did, and it's responsible for some of the best levels in that mode. I'm really glad I got to mention this, by the way. This was like a piece of news I've always wanted to bring up in a video, but again, isn't really worth its own topic, so hey, boom, we got a free excuse right here. More mechanics from single-player translated to other parts of the game, like Salmon Run and multiplayer, and we'll see them more frequently. This admittedly goes from a risky prediction but to a safe prediction by going, yeah, it'll appear in multiplayer in general. Like, I have Salmon Run challenges and multiplayer as a way of bailing me out here. Predicting this for base multiplayer was originally what I wanted to do, but it felt too much more like I want this to happen rather than this actually should happen. Yeah, I still think lockers will probably be overhauled with a, like, more enhanced customization feature. I still feel these were like a placeholder for apartments. And then table turf. Yeah, I genuinely don't see table turf coming back. I could see lockers happening again, or at least being replaced with something like it. This is another case where I wish we went with a bit of a different edit. I wish we showed what some of these old abilities did if we had footage of some of them, like Bomb Sniffer or Splat 1 Recon on the minimap or something like that. I think that would have made more interesting background here. So that should have been a suggestion I made. And then MPU was one I had locked in for a while because this was already going to be a video topic, and I feel this would be a good way to get it in people's heads. And then, yeah, I've now done a post commentary for that before this one, but yeah, I mean, I like MPU as a concept, and you can go to old videos of mine and I'll still have said, yeah, I think MPU as a whole was a good idea. I think there were some things that were executed poorly, and I do want them to be tried again. So that's about it. Not too much on, like, the editing and style of the video itself, because for the most part, I think this is one where it really is just faster paced going through it and tries to have relevant footage. I don't think there's too much I can really say about it this time. At least nothing that comes to mind. Part of that might be that this video is a few months old, and maybe if it was fresher in my head, I would have had it. So I feel like a lot of this ended up just being talking about, you know, my opinions on things or like why I went with the predictions I did. But that was a big part of the process for this video, like opening up Google Sheets and trying to figure out what I wanted to do and constantly tweaking ideas. So I guess the end all question is, am I happy with the final list? And yeah, I feel like I could have been bolder a little bit on the predictions because a lot of these do feel kind of safe. But at the end of the day, they're still supposed to be predictions, not hopes. And like, I feel this is a good balance of things I want versus things I think are practical. And, you know, if it's not, we'll find out when updates drop. So we'll see how accurate this is later down the line.